Welcome, all you various and sundry denizens of the interwebs. I am Telkmaster, and I want to talk about Slime Rancher. Growing up, I generally played games that required developing a great deal of skill to complete. While part of this was a result of most games at the time being skill-centric, it was also due to having the long stretches of time needed to develop those skills. While I certainly still play my share of challenging games, having a full-time job, a household to maintain, and interests beyond just playing games, such as making these videos, means that my time and patience for games at the end of the day can be pretty limited. The last thing I need after a long and stressful day is the specter of failure looming constantly over me. So Slime Rancher provides the sort of low-stakes catharsis that I need those days, and judging by the game's popularity, many others seem to feel the same. Slime Rancher is a 2017 indie game and early access success by Monomi Park where you ranch slimes, obviously. Managing 3 million sold in 3 years, earning overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam and a number of award nominations, it's a debut that most studios would be thrilled to have. It's even spawned its own line of merchandise. The initial impressions from the first-person view and health and energy meters is that of a survival sandbox game, but it's actually more of a farming game along the lines of the Harvest Moon series and fellow indie darling Stardew Valley. To be more specific, the goal is to make money by feeding slimes and selling their tetragonal trapezohedron poops, aka plorts. According to the in-game Slimepedia, these plorts enable all sorts of products and technologies back on Earth in this particular vision of the future. You don't see any of this firsthand, though, as the game takes place entirely on the distant slime homeworld known only as the Far Far Range, where the only direct use for plorts are the gadgets you can craft for use around the ranch. You suck up slimes with your handy backpack and deposit them in corrals. You can then plant gardens and raise chickens to feed your ravenous horde of smiling blobs, and then drop the resulting plorts into the plort market. The value of plorts changes from day to day, and selling plorts saturates the market and temporarily lowers the price, but the sheer volume of plorts you can produce makes waiting for an optimal price unnecessary. Each slime type has a specific food type that they can eat, and most have a favorite food which makes them produce double plorts. You can also feed them another slime's plort to hybridize them into largos, which have the combined diet and favorite foods and behaviors and hazards of both base types. The money you earn from ranching is used primarily to improve plots to automate them or make them more productive, and to buy upgrades for your backpack to make traveling across the range easier. This is all fairly typical of a farming game. What makes it stand out, aside from the first-person perspective, is the strong emphasis on exploration. Typically, the progression in these games is primarily economic. How quickly you make money is reliant on how much money you can invest in the necessary supplies to produce goods. More valuable goods require more investment. In Slime Rancher, however, you don't buy the slimes or the food you feed them. You find them out on the range, and finding slimes that produce more valuable plorts is a matter of exploring further from your ranch. Very few slimes require anything more than the basic pen, and even those aren't strictly necessary. There's nothing stopping you from letting your slimes free range across the farm, or even just collecting plorts dropped by slimes out in the wild. In fact, since reaching new areas is either done through puzzles or feeding the giant-sized Gordo slimes until they burst, reaching the end credits of the game can actually be done without buying anything. This game is just a very laid-back experience. Your captive slimes can't die from neglect, and while many of them are potentially hazardous, the only actively hostile slimes are the occasional ferals and the gremlin-esque tar produced by the largos eating a third type of plort, which can then eat other slimes and multiply further. Ultimately, they aren't much of a concern, and after the first few backpack upgrades, the only true threat is your own carelessness. But if you want it even more laid back, you can play casual mode, which eliminates all the tar that would take a bite out of you. The other ranchers have some more dangerous and fast-paced activities to participate in, but they aren't required for anything other than unlocking some top-tier upgrades and gadgets. You don't have any living expenses or debt to pay off, so even the supposed primary goal of the game is entirely optional. It's just a happy game about taking care of happy slimes on a happy planet. Like most of these farming games, caring for slimes is intrinsically repetitive, but you can automate a lot of the most repetitive tasks, leaving you only a few things you need to do. After roughly 60 hours popping every Gordo, cracking every treasure pod, and climbing to the top of the 7Z Rewards Club, I felt like I'd seen everything there is to see in the game. The world is completely static, so starting a new file from scratch won't yield any new surprises. Usually by the time I have completed a game this thoroughly, I'm glad to be done, but this time I felt a little sad about it, which speaks highly to how much I enjoyed the overall experience. For those looking for a more mastery-oriented gameplay challenge, there is also the Rush mode where the goal is to make as much money as possible within the time limit. It changes a number of rules from the base game, but otherwise is played on the same map as the normal game with some slight adjustments. I'm sure some sort of random map generator for either gameplay mode would be greatly appreciated by the enthusiastic player base. The narrative of the game is perhaps the most interesting thing about it, though. He plays Beatrix LeBeau, who traveled for a year to take over the ranch from its previous owner, Hobson Twilgers, a location so isolated that the only contact with other ranchers is remotely through the range exchange, and the only contact back to Earth is via Starmail. It's through Starmail replies from Bee's former lover Casey that we learn the story of their relationship, but we never actually see Bee's Starmails. These arrive at set intervals as the range is explored. In parallel to this is the story of Hobson, who we learn about from the notes he left throughout the range for Bee and his relationship with fellow rancher Thora West. We learn that Casey is an aspiring musician regularly out touring. Bee is a consummate adventurer, going on hikes and taking extended trips out into the wilderness. Casey, however, can't stand the outdoors, while Bee can't handle the touring lifestyle, so outside of a brief period of time where neither of them was traveling, it was a long-distance relationship. This culminated in Bee deciding to take over the ranch while Casey was out on tour. Meanwhile, there's Hobson, who shares Bee's restlessness. He eventually grew tired of his life on the ranch and discovered that the mysterious ruins in the glass desert were capable of sending him to a place that no human has yet seen. When faced with the opportunity for the ultimate adventure, he instead decided that life with Thora was the adventure he wanted. The last note advises Bee to listen to her heart from time to time. Reading this message triggers the final Starmail from Casey, which upon reading causes the end credits to play, leaving Bee reflecting on her life so far. This incredibly low-key ending actually left me feeling a bit unsettled. Did Bee actually make a huge mistake? Was the entire premise of this cheerful game the result of a decision that meant a lifetime of regret? Early access versions of the Starmails paint a rockier, possibly on-again, off-again relationship. The devs say they changed it to make Casey seem less clingy, but in the final emails, the relationship seems quite positive and healthy despite the periods of separation. Regardless of their time apart, they always came home to each other. Even in the far-flung reaches of the universe, Casey is the only person in Bee's old life she has regular communications with. A relationship is like force welding two lives together, but that doesn't mean you suddenly share all the same interests and preferences. A healthy relationship means sometimes taking part of activities you don't especially enjoy, and also accepting that the other person doesn't enjoy something you do and being willing to have it be something you do on your own. The key is that when all is said and done, you can go home to each other. Perhaps Bee was so comfortable in a relationship that she took it for granted, and didn't grasp just how significant a decision it was at the time. One might argue that if she could so easily walk away from the relationship, it probably wasn't truly working out anyways. I believe it's intended to be an open-ended question by the developers so that the player, as Beatrix, can come to their own conclusion. As for me, as much as I adored the game and enjoyed every minute playing Slime Rancher, without much to do beyond watering drones and hunting the weekend party Gordo, I found myself looking for further adventure elsewhere. So as I put the game aside for the foreseeable future, I like to think that B2 has finally gone home to someone.